Welcome. I am the Reverend Denise Gyauch. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to worship with the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. I'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. If you have questions about our congregation, please do contact me. You can find my email address in the staff directory under Contact Us on our website, and I look forward to hearing from you. If you are joining us for the live broadcast of this service on WebinarJam, won't you please say hello in the chat? We love to know that you're here with us. No matter what platform you're using to join us, you can find helpful resources such as information about ways to give and the link for the social hour following this service in the worship portal on our website, firstuunash.org. We are so glad you're joining us for worship today.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Diane Dowgiert, and my pronouns are she, her. It is my honor to serve as your developmental lead minister. I'm so glad that you are here with us this morning for this time of worship. We are called together by something larger than ourselves, a fierce unrest, a holy rage, a passion for truth, and a hope that we may be the ones to bend the moral arc toward justice. We are called together by something which transcends space and time, a promise of connection, a covenant of mutual support and care, a human need for comfort, a yearning to be healed, an urge toward wholeness, and the instinct to let our weary hearts feel what they feel. We are called together for a greater purpose, to lament our losses, to make meaning of our suffering, to renew our faith in the goodness of life, to commit our lives to the common good, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Ultimately, we are called together by the transforming power of love. Come, let us worship. The words for the chalice lighting were written by Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I will not tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit. So I ask, all you do in this moment is to remember these words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love.
Good morning. I'm Marguerite Mills, your Director of Lifespan Religious Education. My pronouns are she, her. And I want to mention that there is some information online that you might want to look at. I've just put some things in the chat that you might want to look at for this story. The story is called Rainbows in the Windows by Jen Blosser. Somewhere in the world, there was a child and their grandparent sheltering in place, just like you are now. And they were really fed up, perhaps a little bit like you are sometimes. The novelty of being at home all the time and doing whatever they wanted had worn off. It had worn off for the child, and they felt bored. For the grandparent, it was less a feeling of boredom weighing them down, but rather a sense of hopelessness. Then things happened at the U.S. Capitol, and it was just all too much. They watched TV for hours, though how many hours remained a mystery. They had stopped keeping track of time, really. The days all blurred together. They felt they'd been doing this for so long. And then one day, when the child accidentally sat on the remote after getting more snacks, and the TV accidentally turned off, there was something new reflected in the black screen of the powered-down TV. The child and their grandparent turned around to look out their front window and find the source of this reflection. In the house across the street, there was a piece of paper taped in the window, and on that paper was a colorfully drawn rainbow. Well, this was something new, something unexpected and bright and cheery and new. The child and grandparent turned to one another knowingly, grinning. In a flash, the child retrieved a piece of paper and crayons and began to draw a rainbow, while the grandparent fetched tape, and a moment later, they gazed upon their window with pride. Their rainbow shone back across the street, joyfully mirroring their neighbor's rainbow. And what happened next was like magic. Every day, more cheerful rainbows appeared in more windows, all up and down the street. The child and their grandparent gleefully drew rainbows for each window in their home, watching their neighbors do the same. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. All manner of other colors burst forth, seeming to shine through the windows, a cacophony of color. But the people didn't stop there. They continued to draw. Rainbows were taped to neighbors' doors, slipped into mailboxes. They were sent to care homes, to beloved elders who couldn't have visitors. Rainbows were left tucked under the windshield wipers of Uber Eats drivers' cars. They were left out for the delivery folks. People made rainbows to send to hospitals, scrawled with messages of gratitude and admiration for everyone working to help the sick, from the doctors and nurses to the custodial staff and maintenance workers. Stockers working hard in grocery stores found paper rainbows between cans of beans and corn, between the mops and the sponges, left waiting on the shelves where the toilet paper was sold out. Now, Families on solitary walks around the city go rainbow hunting. The child and their grandfather like to do this, taking paper with them to write down all the places they see rainbows hanging. The empty school, the corner store, windows of brownstone homes, even hanging from balconies 15 stories up. They make a list of all the rainbows emerging, logging each place where the colors shine into the empty streets. By now, you've probably figured out that this story is really happening all over the world right now. Folks are coming together in spirit while physically distanced to lovingly reassure one another with brilliant colors. The rainbows are beautiful, and to see them alone is a joy, but they carry with them a promise, just as rainbows have always done. They shine as a reminder of hope. We are in this together. The storm will end, and we will come out on the other side. And so I invite you to join in this hanging of rainbows and to print out some of those in the packet online and see how many you can send out into the world. And so ends this morning's story.
Thank you, Marguerite. One of the things I missed most right now is the weekly opportunity to pass our offering bowls from hand to hand, physically reminding ourselves that we are connected to and dependent upon each other to create and nurture our shared life. Fortunately, our financial folks have made it easy for anyone, anytime to use our online donation form, so that even in this challenging season, we continue to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values. One of the ways our congregation symbolically puts a rainbow in our window, sends our rainbows out into the world to encourage neighbors and publicly express our hopes, is to share every Sunday's collection with an organization whose work outside our walls aligns with our values. Our Share the Plate partner for the month of January is the congregation's Noah A-Team, the action team that coordinates our participation in Noah, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. Noah is an interfaith, multiracial coalition of congregations and community organizations working to build a powerful social justice movement in Nashville. The worship portal on our website, firstuunash.org, contains more information about Noah, as well as a link to our online donation form. In this new year, as always, your gift, like your presence among us, is received with deep gratitude. Friends, holding now to the gratitude and the hope that underlie our spiritual practice and our faithful response to the world, I invite you now to settle yourselves wherever you are. Know that you make the space you inhabit holy simply by being there. And as you breathe in and out, feel the center of your being. Know that your holy place is connected to the places inhabited by each of us, that we are all connected. No matter where we are, no matter when we are tied to each other. In this knowledge, let us join together in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love that holds us all and holds all that is our lives. Right now, all that is our lives feels perhaps too much. Some of us are fine. Some of us are healthy. Many of us are worried. The events of this past week, the past months, the past years have raised so much concern for so many of us. We feel so many feelings. mixed up in the wonder and joy and love that is always part of our lives. There is anger and despair. There is hope and there is rage, the sadness, the longing for something other, in the midst of appreciating what is. Some of us are learning new and difficult realities, new truths about who we are as a people, new truth about the fragility of the democracy which we hold so dear in our tradition. And some of us are not learning new things. Some of us have known these things, have felt the lack of the firm value of democracy in our culture in their bodies, in their lives, in the lives of the people closest to them. We are seeing new things about ourselves. May we be worthy of the new truths we are learning. May we find that we can hold them, that we can indeed hold all that is our life, because we are connected to each other, because we are connected to the life and the love that enfolds, encloses, encircles, and moves among us and among all that is. Amen. Blessed be. May it be so.
Thank you, Denise, for that prayer that grounds us in the reality of where we are today. The reading that I have this morning was written by Jan Richardson, Blessing in a Time of Violence, which is to say, this blessing is always, which is to say, there is no place this blessing does not long to cry out in lament, to weep its words in sorrow, to scream its lines in sacred rage. Which is to say, there is no day this blessing ceases to whisper into the ear of the dying, the despairing, the terrified. Which is to say, there is no moment this blessing refuses to sing itself into the heart of the hated and the hateful, the victim and the victimizer, with every last ounce of hope it has. Which is to say, there is none that can stop it, none that can halt its course, none that will still its cadence, none that will delay its rising, none that can keep it from springing forth from the mouths of us who hope, from the hands of us who act, from the hearts of us who love, from the feet of us who will not cease our stubborn, aching, marching, until this blessing has spoken its final word, until this blessing has breathed its benediction in every place, in every tongue. Peace, peace, peace. I don't know about you, but these days I have felt like lamenting. Lamentation is an age-old religious ritual that's found throughout the biblical prophets and psalms. An entire book of the Bible is given over to lamentations. To lament is to give voice to feelings of anguish and pain. To lament is to give voice to feelings of despair and fear, sorrow and loss. And to do so within the sacred container of a covenanted community, a people who make a promise of mutual care and support, a promise to journey together in the ways of love and service. Lamentation in the biblical sense is often accompanied by wailing, weeping, and the gnashing of teeth. When the unthinkable happens, when tragedy strikes, when acts of evil are perpetrated, when sacred ground is desecrated, the sanctity of life violated, and human dignity defiled, lamentation offers up what is in us, the horror, the terror, the pain, and the rage. Lamentation offers it up to be healed, its energy transformed, so that we may be the people we want to be. People guided by principles of inherent worth and dignity, of justice, equity, and compassion, committed to spiritual growth, the democratic process, and care for the whole interdependent web of existence. To lament is to trust that the hurt and broken places within us will be seen, heard, and lovingly held until we can find our good hearts again and move forward in hope. Lamentation in the ritual in the religious sense runs counter to the grain of our prevailing dominant U.S. American culture, a culture steeped in optimism and a Puritan work ethic that equates pain with gain, and thus the ability to endure pain is seen as a sign of strength, even righteousness, and suffering is seen as redemptive. Our early Unitarian and Universalist ancestors in the United States left the Puritan fold over doctrines of human nature and of how salvation is attained. Yet, that Puritan work ethic and Calvinist belief that only a predetermined few were worthy of salvation is part of the spiritual DNA that shaped U.S. American culture. There are few, if any, places where lamentation can take place, where the public exposure of pain and vulnerability is allowed. When salvation is understood as personal, not collective or universal, when pain and suffering become personal and private matters to be worked out between one and one's God, public lamentation has no place. Yet, the human need for lament is real. To name our losses and express the true depth of our experiences and feelings, and to have them witnessed. For my estimation, the closest thing we have to a ritual space for lamentation is the public square, the place we go to protest injustice. What the public square lacks is an explicit covenant of shared promises and shared commitments, a covenant that creates a sacred container that is safe enough for true transformation to take place. What we have seen again and again is that the police, whose job it is to ensure safety in the public square, use different policing tactics depending on if the protesters are white or if they are Black or brown or indigenous. And too often, the public square is anything but safe. Peaceful, nonviolent protest has long been part of our Unitarian Universalist history and tradition. Having participated in and helped to lead a few myself, what happened in Washington, D.C. grieves my heart deeply. It struck at the core of my deeply held commitments to nonviolence and democracy. Over the past several years, I have considered public protest to be a spiritual practice. There's something about the camaraderie, the solidarity of purpose, raising my voice, literally, speaking out, even yelling chants like no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. And this is what democracy looks like. There's something about the sense of being part of something larger than myself, part of a movement committed to bringing about change, change for the common good. From protesting death of migrants in the desert regions of our border with Mexico, to protesting separation of migrant children from their parents, to protests against police violence and the murders of Black people, to the Women's March and the Moral Monday marches with the Reverend William Barber. What I can tell you is that the police presence was remarkably different at the Women's March, for example, than at immigration and Black Lives Matter protests. At the Women's March, the police were barely visible. At immigration and Black Lives Matter protests, they were always there in large numbers, dressed in riot gear. I can tell you that each protest and each march was a form of lamentation, naming what was wrong and making space to express what we felt about it. I always left feeling more hopeful than when I arrived. Lament is a human need. Growing up, I often heard my father say, "Woe is me. Woe is me," he would say. He and my mother, being the kind of parents who didn't share adult problems with their children, I never quite understood where his sense of woe was coming from. At the same time, the news was constantly playing either on the radio or the television, so I was aware of what was going on in the world. Each night, the news broadcast would end with the death toll from the war in Vietnam. I went to bed troubled by that number and the human lives it represented. My guess is that my father was troubled too, that it was a contributing factor in his ongoing expression of woe, especially as my brothers approached the age where they could be drafted. But we never talked about it, ever. I am grateful that my parents didn't burden me with their problems, and I'm grateful that they didn't shield me from the news of the world, even when the news was ugly and painful. I do wish they had talked with me honestly and reassuringly about family problems and world problems and how they dealt with difficult emotions. It would have helped me understand what was underneath my father's lament. Woe is me. The silence around talking about difficult things was part of the cultural ethos of our white middle-class neighborhood, where speaking of difficulty and struggle was viewed as airing dirty laundry in public. I've come to understand that this keeping up of appearances is a part of what we know today, and many have known for longer than us. It's part of what is white supremacy culture. Let me be clear. This is not to say my parents were white supremacists. They weren't. In fact, I first learned about anti-racism from my dad, not from his words, but from his actions. When he died, more than 150 people came to his memorial service, many of them employees of the Kmart he managed in a multiracial, multi-ethnic neighborhood. They all spoke of how kind and generous he was with them and how he would stick his neck out for the people of color who worked for him. Still, he was, and we are, part of a white supremacy culture that has been here since European settlers first arrived on American soil. The Puritan work ethic of no pain, no gain, and keeping up appearances works to keep people cut off from their feelings. When a person can't acknowledge their own pain and suffering, it makes it harder to see it in others. It makes it easy to be disconnected from the exploitation and oppression happening all around us, which is what makes lamentation a religious practice. It keeps us honest about what's really happening. It keeps us honest about our feelings. As the poet Oriah Mountain Dreamer writes, I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. Today, there is so much to lament, so much that is lost, so much that is broken, hundreds of thousands dead from COVID and no signs of the virus letting up anytime soon, a bomb in downtown Nashville, the desecration of our nation's capital by a violent mob, our democracy in peril. Lamentation won't change any of this or fix it or even make it better. Yet we know that pain unrevealed is pain unhealed. Bringing our pain to the altar of community to be revealed and healed is a gift, a blessing to self and others. Within the sacred container of covenant, guided by principle, we make the space for transformation, turning despair into hope, turning anguish into action. Not a hope that things will get better kind of passive hope, but the kind of hope that causes us to move, the kind of hope that gives us enough energy to take action. Unitarian Universalist minister Edward Everett Hale once wrote, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Friends, we have perilous days still ahead of us, from now until the inauguration, From now until vaccines abate the spread of coronavirus, from now until we dismantle white supremacy culture and the racism it enables. No one of us can do everything, but each of us can do something, which is how we create hope. Maybe the something you can do is to nurture a healthier, more resilient you. Maybe you can be the one to hear the lament of another, to truly hear. Maybe you can talk honestly and reassuringly with your children and your grandchildren. Maybe you can do a random act of kindness, like putting rainbows in your windows to cheer someone's day. Maybe you can sign up to take part in Nashville's Living the Pledge to End Racism. Maybe you can call one of your senators or Congress people. Call them and tell them what action you want them to take. Together, we just might make a difference. This is the blessing, that violence does not have the final say, that our fierce unrest, our holy rage, our passion for truth, these have the final say. This is the blessing, that through our deepest lament, hope will rise, that we will be the ones to bend the arc toward justice. This is the blessing. There is a transforming grace moving through our lives, a love holding us, a love that will not let us go. May it be so. May we make it so through our living. The words for our chalice extinguishing were written by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service has ended, but our service to the world continues. May you go with love in your hearts. May love surround you as you go. May love light every step. May the spirit of this community abide within your soul. Go in peace. Go in love.